Hello and welcome to The Blueprint. I'm your host, Marley Finnegan. And before we dig in, please click like and subscribe below. No matter where you get your podcast, it helps us to reach more people. Also, consider leaving us a small donation, whether that be $1, $5, via one of the links below. It really helps us in funding the creation of this work. And it means a lot to know that you're out there and that you like us. So let's dig in. Hello and welcome to The Blueprint. My name is Marley Finnegan, and I am so thrilled today to be joined by my friend, Robyn Morrison. She is a professional catalyst for positive social transformation, an egalitarian organizer, an author of an amazing book, and a polymath. So, welcome, Robyn, to The Blueprint.
So good to see you, Marley.
Oh my gosh, I was so fortunate to be able to meet Robyn this past April when we co-attended a beautiful retreat through Viridescent. Chance Thompson, the founder of Viridescent, has also been on The Blueprint. But really, Robyn's vast, incredible knowledge of so many different things, including extremely intentional education, career path, so many different jobs and interests that all are interconnected to really have a more equitable, better future for all, and that deep intention. And so I wanted to have Robyn on to talk a lot more about this. So Robyn, would love to hear your sort of beginnings, your curiosity. How did this begin for you as a young person, in terms of your childhood and sort of the story that weaves you to where you are, and also even just talking more about all the vast things you've done and seen and what how you got here today.
Well, it's good to start with our childhood because it shapes us in so many ways. And, as a student of archetypal astrology, I realized that my soul chose this path. And what that path meant for me was I was conceived in grief and born um, uh, about a year after my father's parents both died 10 days apart. And he had to give up his job as an FBI agent and move back from New Jersey to Montana. And that is, I never understood till I was much older um, that context, but I just raised myself. I was the middle child. By the time my mom and dad had even had any kind of recovery from the trauma of, the deaths and the moves and the career change, I, by the time my sister was born, like I don't remember, and my mom remembers me being a very easy child that I didn't get or and maybe didn't need much attention. But at the time, I did feel like, so that kind of shaped this experience of not belonging and not being wanted. My mom actually said I wasn't wanted. So what my little child did with that was, well, I'm going to be valuable. I'm going to achieve things. I'm going to get attention by, accomplishment and achieving things. And it that kind of is a story of the um, my first 29 years, right? My first Saturn return, like the process of growing up is coming into my own power and my role, and that role of being kind of like the family scapegoat has been kind of a repeating theme. And I think it took years of reinventing myself, and which I'm extremely appreciative and grateful that I had the internal capacity um, to continue to find myself and reinvent myself. My father was the one who I felt unconditional love from, but he was also like of Norwegian ancestry and really very, very closed with his affection. But I knew that he loved me. And one thing he said later after um, my when I decided to go to seminary at age 50 and give up my whole life and go on this great adventure, he said, you know, I've seen you hit rock bottom and bounce back so many times that I don't worry about you anymore. I just don't worry about you anymore. And I think that is it. I think I have a resilience, and it comes, and I think it is that I have a very penetrating mind.
Mm.
In my natal chart, I have Sun conjunct Mercury conjunct Pluto in the ninth house. And it's, it is. Um, so I drove my mom crazy. It was probably one of the reasons why she didn't pay much attention to me because I asked her questions. I was like, why? Why this? Why that? Why this? Why that? And I still have that. So I'm driven. I think one of my driving forces is curiosity to figure things out. I mean, like there's problems in the world, and I have a mind that um, almost needs to address those. I mean, it wants to find what I call levers
Mm-hmm.
to intervene in systems, and it just like are a catalyst, like little tiny things that we can do that make a big difference, and that has directed me um, now for half of my life, for sure.
Yes, your levers and the way that you weave solutions and also the interconnectivity of the problems, I think is really, really profound. And that is where, your naming of the polymath, the multi-solver, the ability to see, the seer at a high level
Mhm.
is so essential and important as we deal with a poly crisis. I am completely floored by a couple of things that you said. First of all, I'm so sorry, to hear every time I hear someone say that, their parents said that they weren't wanted. That is so gutting. But also to me, it's like, where was that parent so deeply hurt and hurting and projecting that onto the innocence of a beautiful young essence of life, such as yourself. Like it's just so unfair, but in those moments, it really is just, it cuts to the core of our being.
Mhm.
And for you to also recognize, so I'm curious about what age you were when that happened, and then also for you to recognize that you were born into grief. What a profound, almost freeing thing to kind of realize,
Mhm.
is to see with empathy the hard times that your parents were going through, and hopefully that it wasn't, it wasn't about you in the centering of you as the grief, but more just, I almost thought of it as you're like the spark of light and life within that moment, that there is so much pain, but you were created in this moment of love,
Yep. Yep.
that creation is there.
Yeah.
Anyway, I wanted to ask just about like your ages when you dealt with those huge emotional challenges.
Hmm. Well, I think my teenage years with my mom were typically difficult, right?
Mhm.
I mean, um, at 13, 14, she just really was actually kind of disgusted by me.
Mm.
And I look at what we're dealing with right now in terms of women's autonomy and
Mhm.
women's independence and our ability to make choices for our life. And I know that, see, I ended up pregnant in college shortly, like 18 months, 20 months after I was married, too young, right?
Mhm.
And I could have chosen to end that pregnancy because I was right in the early years of women's ability to make that choice. My mom didn't have the ability to even to choose birth control. And
Mm.
here we are in this day and age facing threats, I mean, real huge threats to women's autonomy and rights, right? So
Absolutely.
that was my mom's reaction to my getting married at that age and my pregnancy and the birth of my children was it was came from her woundedness.
Mm.
And and then, years later through ancestry, I discovered that this is a ancestral pattern. And
Mm.
I'm happy to say, it wasn't an easy life, but I think I ended that. I
Amazing.
mean, but I lived through it too.
Mm.
Like we have these burdens to bear in life, and my I've never quit. I've had emotional roller coasters, right? And I also understand that a lot better through astrologies, but you can't actually confine me.
Yes, I love that. I love that so much.
I don't get trapped. I don't get,
No, you are so vital and so resilient, and that is like your fire and your zest for solutions and life and the continuation of the earth's rhythms and human well-being. It's like
Mhm.
embedded in your cells. I can feel it. And you being the polymath that you are, you see all these challenges, but you also see the solutions. So can you talk about sort of the biggest historical inflection points that you have tied together in your book and talk about your book? Like,
Yeah.
let's, but I loved reading it and seeing the ways in which like all these concepts that I know and understand and have studied, but the way in which they are so webbed and weaved together.
Uh-huh. Um, well, the I in 2020 we went through the change of an age, and we're still in the transition period from one age of being human to another age of being human. So we all have had a rocky ride.
Mhm.
Okay, so the first thing I did in January of 2020, I don't know, I just had this compulsion to write a memoir to process my life experience. I had just I used um, in the pursuit of becoming a religious, a Christian
Robyn,
minister.
hold on. It skipped. Like I couldn't hear you for a second. So
Oh, okay.
start over where you say in early 2020 you wrote a memoir.
Yeah, in early 2020, I sat down and in winter, I'm always busy in the summer, but in the winter, I write. So I sat down to write a book to process my own trauma, my own spiritual trauma. And the name of the book is Resist or Submit, My Story of Religious Scapegoating. And I think there's a whole lot of people who are processing spiritual trauma, abuse, and um, in a very real way right now in the United States. That's part of the experience that we're experiencing is some religious extremism, um, not grounded in reality at all, not grounded in humanity at all. And so I sat down and wrote that memoir in 2020. Then in 2021, in the winter, I wrote another book And it was definitely a polymath book. When I talked to an editor about that, they said there's too many subjects in this book. So that one, I don't think, I mean, that one's, I finished it. But then in 2020, the beginning of 2024, I um, I had this compelling sense for years that part of my responsibility is to heal the divisions. I'm a nonpartisan, a very politically active nonpartisan, and the swing voters, independent voters just aren't understood in our society right now. And so, growing up with my parents on opposite ends of the spectrum, and in a household where we were encouraged to debate in high school and in college, so to be able to articulate both sides of everything. And I don't see that happening.
Mhm.
So the book was really about a call to humanity, but specifically in the context of the United States, that we are being divided intentionally by those with the most wealth and power.
Mhm.
And what we are actually facing in this age is we have emphasized technology over humanity, technical information over caring and compassion.
Mm.
And so the book really was, and it was written in a pseudonym. So, in order to talk about our interdependence, I felt that it wasn't a personal thing.
Mm.
And I said, well, how do you write about this? And the message I got is the fourth person collective perspective. So the book is not mine. The book was channeled for
Yeah.
the benefit of this particular moment in time, where I don't think there's anything more important than us being able to break the chains of division that have been used to suppress the masses of people in order to accumulate power at the top. So it isn't the red or the blue conflict. It's that we are intentionally being fed propaganda and lies and misinformation in order that we don't collectively recognize our humanity and our power together.
You and I share this belief or this observation deeply, and the easiest and best way I've ever heard it explained is that the political parties are two wings of the same bird. It's the same strategy and maybe a different form of manipulation, but the intention is separation and division because that is easier to deal with people than a unified front. And it's interesting. I was just having a conversation last night about this idea of technological, almost that religion, our religion, which religion we is a whole nother. You and I also deeply agree on that sort of manipulation of fear and separation used by religion over time and space to
Yeah,
control and to gain capital.
yeah,
Um, but this idea that we're almost in this like technocratic religion, like AI and technology is this new religion, and it's humanity allowing the evolution of technology over the evolution of humanity. It's like this
yeah,
prioritizing of a hierarchy of technology being more important than our own evolution. And are we focused on the evolution of humans in a way that to me it's a consciousness game, the whole thing. It's when we as a human species raise our consciousness such that we're much more aligned with oneness and the earth's rhythms and
mhm,
each other, we become what we are meant to be.
yeah,
We become
yeah,
our spiritual sacred spaces
uh-huh,
that, together become something much more profound. And when you have that spiritual oneness and that connection to all that is, it's much harder to be controlled or to be manipulated because you don't have the deep fear that is so intrinsic with, these control mechanisms. But I want to, with your book, you weave in the religious history, the origins of capitalism, all the way through to today, and really how it has been a really interpersonal warfare almost. It's like an interpersonal spiritual war. Would you
Mhm.
say, like, people have been asking about World War III, and I keep kind of saying it's happening. It's a war on consciousness. It's not a physical war.
Mhm. Yeah, I think you're onto something there for sure about that World War III isn't somewhere out there in the future. It's
It's happening.
and that my father was a bomber pilot in the South Pacific during World War II. Um, he passed away in 2023, almost made it to his 100th birthday. But he was pretty disgusted with the rise of fascist energies in the
Mm-hmm.
United States. And during those early years of that rising fascism, kind of religious extremism combination thing that's been going on, he, I had other hospice veterans who were heart sick, I would say, heart sick, because they carried the psychic trauma of that war their whole lives with the thought that, well, at least we ended that fascism, we ended that aspect of humanity. They really thought that that was the war to end all wars, but it never ended. We
Wow. Yeah.
never, and it's like we are people in the United States are live in a fantasy land that we are kind and protectors of the rest of the world, because that really hasn't necessarily been what we've done.
Well, and I think there's a real reckoning in the US now. I mean, I talk all the time about our emissions per capita, our social and environmental responsibility to changing our consciousness about the way we consume and the way we live, truly, because the way that capitalism has been set up is that convenience supersedes consciousness, and just in service to financial growth of a few. And so, can you talk about how, I guess, how the origins of capitalism and this interconnectivity to religion and all these sort of through lines that you have articulated to where we are now, but also, what are the solutions that you foresee to, I'm asking you a lot of questions at once.
Yeah. So I think what we're looking at is the history of market systems and religions, which correlate. They feed each other, right? And so feudalism supported monarchy, right? Mercantilism supported the growth of a class of tradesmen and merchants and entrepreneurs. And from that, then that started a system wherein people who were enterprising and did accumulate capital during the growth of civilization, where cities were starting to become centers of commerce and things like that. That then shifted into gradually mercantilism, and the colonial project is fed back to the kings and queens, that they had to be supported. And then, the great American experiment was to break that, the control of the kings, the feudalism, and to allow an economic system to thrive in the United States. But it it still was embedded in aristocracy and everything. So the United States was a place where people could be free and have their own business, but we still had wealth. And the concentration of wealth in parts of the United States was they would be second sons of aristocracy that were given plantations, right? So they have that same aristocratic wealth that was in England. And then in the North, it was more people who could assemble capital. Well, where did they get that capital? It was often coming in from outside of the United States to build steel factories. I mean, to actually bring industry to the United States. And I've studied the difference between the zeitgeist at the time of the Declaration of Independence, which was we're going to promise all people, all the men, because they didn't imagine women could fight in a war, but we'll promise, Native Americans, slaves, indentured service, and opportunity for freedom, which didn't happen,
Mhm.
right? But they fought the war, they won, they eventually got power. They got the peace treaty, and they replaced the king. And by the time they wrote the Constitution, it was, oh, we don't trust the people. And so they only gave the people the right to vote for the House of Representatives. And then it was you had to be a man, and you probably had to own land in most states, right? So we forget that
The hierarchy was embedded from the
the
very beginning.
fire hierarchy. And so people are lamenting the loss of a democracy. Well, what we've had is technically a representative, um, you know, form of a republic, and not, and we under Franklin Roosevelt and the New Deal, and then the war and all that kind of stuff, we built the first ever in history middle class. And that didn't go over well with the wealthy because the
Mm,
middle class destroys the pyramid structure.
wow.
So we've had attacks against the middle class since they needed everybody. They needed every single person during the war. But after the war, then they had policies that sent women into their homes, out of the workplace. And there was a concerted effort to shift power back to white men.
Mm,
And then shortly after I graduated and passed the CPA exam was when Reagan dismantled the whole um, tax structure that was redistributing wealth. And so if you don't have a tax structure that redistributes wealth, capitalism implodes upon itself. And that's what we are seeing
mhm.
because
Right.
it's almost like the wealthy and powerful, their emotional and intellectual growth is stunted because
Mm.
they can't understand because they've never experienced anything but wealth and power.
Right. And fear and scarcity doesn't exist in the way that it does for 90% of the globe who are constantly dealing with the need for safety via financial stability, financial, economic, s- physical safety.
And on the other side, with the capitalists, the people competing for power at the top, you have to understand that as children, as early as they can remember, all the way through their life, that was their purpose.
Mhm.
They were raised not to care about other people, but to
Mm.
achieve certain um, standards that are set up in the wealthy classes. And they don't learn
Mm.
how to get along, or they don't learn. I mean, like it's quite obvious when we listen to some of our elected officials, like our president, that they've never had to worry about grocery prices or making ends meet.
Or
So,
another human being's well-being.
right,
It's
because
it's
they're not taught to do that.
So what's interesting to me is this idea that I feel so much that it's this sacred divine feminine rising that is so critical in this moment, and the masculine rebalancing of energy such that it's both within us as individuals rebalancing the masculine and feminine parts, but also obviously collectively and societally. And this idea of like, when with colonialism and coming into these spaces and places and telling other people who had lived in reciprocity with the planet
Mhm.
for since its, you know, existence, that they were devoid of intellect or devoid of, advancement. But basically almost that it's coming from this place of a lack of the sacred within. Like when
Yeah.
we murder the femininity within us, the parts of us that are connected to the unseen world and our inner knowing, our intuition, the water, the earth, oneness, rest, almost sufficiency, almost being at peace with what is. Like when those parts don't exist, we want to almost eliminate others that do have that healthy relationship, because seeing the indigenous people that are in right relationship to the earth and at peace and happiness with what they have is a reflection of what we don't have, that inner peace within. And so
Mhm.
I don't know, because I think so often, obviously, with our teachings and education, we hear the white version of America. We don't hear and learn about the
Yeah.
horrifying atrocities that happened all along the way to all people of color and, indigenous people. But it's almost like the through line through a lot of it is this missing sacred feminine essence and energy that is balancing, that is about equity, that is about nourishment and love. And, so I'm curious about what you feel and perceive around that shifting of energy in this moment and how that plays into these very real problems that we have.
Hmm. Well, good and bad news, right? So we are this change of age is a shift from 800 years where society is run by Earth in energies, Capricorn, which correlates with the whole fossil fuel um, phenomenon. Is we're extracting resources, and that's the form of capitalism we did for a while. But when now we've shifted into air and our threat isn't, I think actually our biggest threat is AI.
Hmm. Right.
And
Yeah.
and it's in part because it's being developed to replace humans.
Hmm. Right.
And it requires everything that humans need and
Incredible
more.
amounts of water, of
Water and
air, of
energy and resources, precious minerals, all of that. And so that I but it will be interesting to see this transit of Pluto being now in Aquarius is why power is being concentrated in the technology sector. Um, and all of those are equally potentially good as nothing is purely evil. See, I live my life based on a devout belief that the line between good and evil strikes through the heart of every
Mhm.
human being,
Yeah, I
and that we have to have systems in place to deal with our own anger and hatred and need for revenge or just all those natural human emotions. Um, and so the feminine needs, so I wouldn't say that Aquarius is the rising of the feminine. It is the rising of androgyny.
uh-huh. Well, so I guess I should reel it back. I was in this shamanic retreat in 2022 where she
Mhm.
talked about this basically this 26,000 year period where the masculine was the dominant energy and it ended in 2012. And so in 2012, it was the shift to a 26,000 year cycle of the feminine. But
Mhm.
where I was just talking about this last night, is that I don't believe that it means then it's a tipping to matriarchy and an extremity in a different way, but it's rather a zooming out to the balance that is required for oneness and reciprocity with the
Right.
earth, with
Right.
all aspects of self, others, the elements,
Yeah.
so I agree. I don't think that the feminine nature is to dominate, to want that.
Matriarchal cultures were not, didn't concentrate power in the same way.
Right. And I think it's really more of this intentional because, we need all parts. We need the beautiful, healthy masculine to help. Like we need it. We need everything to come together in this unification. So I'm
But
really
I think what we need for is for people to realize that gender is, not black and white any more than anything else is black and white. Is we live in a full color, world, and
absolutely.
but our language is shaped by, our language necessitates that we are separating.
Hmm.
So the danger of separation by, language that's male, female, we use words to describe, there's a danger that that becomes reality rather than an attempt. Words point to something, they're symbols of something. And so I think what Aquarius to me, as the you look at the evolution of humanity through, the archetypes of the different astrological signs, then moving from Capricorn, from earth to air, in one part of our culture, while we're also shifting from the age of, to the age of Aquarius. Now we have this energy in Aquarius, and to me, Aquarius, it's opposite Leo, right? So it's about the full expression, the full creative expression of all of us,
Hmm. Yeah.
and bringing the fact, bringing it into being, that whether, well, no matter what body parts you were given when you were born, or chromosomes you were given when you're born, we all have Mars and Venus. We all have those archetypes in our character. We have all of the archetypes. And the wonderful thing is, women moving into astrologies has, recovered the goddess energy of the asteroids, which is just as powerful. So one of the ones that was, completely ignored, and she was discovered in 200, more than 200 years ago, is Ceres, the Earth
Hmm.
Mother, the mother who, the goddess of what we need to grow on Earth to sustain us. She's the mother of the goddess of community, also Demeter in a different, um, culture, right? So there's been the Earth goddess, who isn't. I mean, what is typically feminine and what is typically masculine anymore, right?
Yeah.
I I am a woman, who's very masculine,
Mhm.
but I don't look masculine, right?
Yeah. No, I resonate with that. I definitely have masculine energy, very much so. And I've used that. I guess, in years past, it's been more prevalent in spaces and places where that was the way in which you had to move up or excel or be noticed, in ways that don't necessarily align with what I would desire to be the way that it works.
Mhm.
And I want to, speaking about series, you have uh, You have such a gift of gardening, and you are devout to your beautiful home garden and the local kids in the neighborhood. And I'm hearing so much about bioregional resilience and this focus on food sovereignty, localization of food. And really, it's a part of this. Um, it's a part of the risk resilience that we really need as a species is this localization of our food. So would love to hear about your work in the garden, your perspectives on food and how this plays into our unification as well.
Well, I think that's a really timely question. It's a really timely conversation that we should be having with our neighbors and with our local communities because we're seeing the breakdown of food distribution and food has been commoditized. It, as wealth goes to the top, then they start buying options on. I mean, we don't, the average person on the street doesn't realize how much power has been put to influence over their grocery and their food supplies and everything. Plus, we are growing our food in a way that isn't sustainable, right? And so, yeah, I think in about 2015, I got really involved in local food systems back in Montana and out here in Oregon. I'm in an agricultural area, but we it's complex. It's not so just as easy as putting solar panels on your house or driving an electric vehicle. It's about living in harmony with the natural world. So there's so much that can be done in your local community, and from that, you're building relationships, and it isn't political. And local politics doesn't need to be partisan. In fact, politics at the city and the county level, I don't think the partisanship belongs there at all. I think
Mhm.
if we had political systems in which people in the community gathered together, learned to trust each other, learn to create, a sustainable community, support the businesses that are there, not just exploiting the community people. Homegrown businesses was my specialty when I was in economic development. So doing that and in that actually creates a better politics.
Well, and once you have sovereignty over your food and you're working in collaboration with your community, like what you actually need externally starts to change in terms
Mhm,
of your understanding of sufficiency. Once you're sufficient in your food and in relationship, like
mhm.
you don't suddenly need all these other externalities that maybe before you felt like you did. And I think to your point, I've had a lot of sort of downloads and even dreams about food scarcity led by oligarchic ways, and the amount of farmland and things that are owned by the extreme wealthy is troubling, but also there's such a deep lack of nourishment in mono agriculture within the
Yes,
actual
please.
food and what it's doing within our bodies. And so when I buy food from my local farmers markets and support those people that genuinely care, the food tastes different. And when
It
you
does. It
grow
has
it,
more nutrients. It's rich in nutrients if it's grown organically in rich soil, and it's just so much healthier. And a lot of our pending health crisis won't be solved until we also address
food,
our food because
a hundred
what
percent.
you eat affects your food, your health so much. And
Yes, the nutrient density is vastly different in that healthful soil, but even with the intention, I believe, of the farmer, just like when someone cooks you something and they really put their heart into it and it tastes different, or you cook yourself something and it tastes different. I really think this is a keystone topic for us, and I love that, it feels like with your intention for unification, it really comes down to this bioregional, or for lack of a better term, local organization of community in ways that there's resilience. Is that feel like a pretty critical component based on your vast knowledge of systems?
Yeah, and when you start looking at levers for change, trying to change things at a national level with a country as complex as the United States um, is pretty mind-boggling. But
Mhm.
trying to change things in your neighborhood can be challenging. It can be confronting, but there's really no excuse, right? It's
Right.
just like it is your backyard. It is your next door neighbor. It's the person across the street. And then if you start there and you can overcome the fear of the other in
Mhm.
doing that, because I do think at this point there's a lot of fear of neighbors, and and that is not a good way to build community. So trying to overcome that and like sharing food, and my husband and I belong to two community supported agricultural things, one of which we give away to our neighbors, the whole amount of it, because they have two adorable 3-year-old twins, and they're both uh, veterans, um,
Mm.
and struggling to try to figure out what's next for them. So, trying to do that kind of stuff. And I tell you that the highlight of my summer has been the kids who were hanging out in the summer in the neighborhood, right? Playing in our little area we created to build
Yeah.
community. I designed our yard to build community. I designed our backyard to introduce children to ecosystems
Which
and
I
the way the plants and the everything relates to each other, and they love it. It's a great adventure.
That literally makes my heart soar. I love that so much. I think that is the most important education we can be giving our children right now, is how to relate and have relationality with the earth and with the ecosystems and with the different plants, and the way that the cycles of the sun and the moon, and understanding what we always have known, but that we have really lost track of with this technological admiration in our society. And I would love to talk a little bit about your relationship, because I know, having been able to witness you in relationship with your beautiful, amazing partner, I just, I find such inspiration in your story, in the way you relate to each other, and in what I would call a really beautiful balancing of masculine and feminine energies, with open hearts and with like intention.
Hmm. Well, the first several years of our marriage was really rough. And but because our um, marriage as two clergy people confronted the hierarchy, and
Mm.
the feminine lost. And it was really hard time for me.
Mm.
But you're right. It in our marriage, what helps us to be solid is we declare a breakdown when a breakdown happens. There's no. I had other marriages where I had a list of resentments and regrets, and and you just kind of add to it whenever there was an argument. With not with Jerry and I, we get complete when there's an upset, and it's usually a breakdown in communication. Most upsets are, and we do bring out. He is not threatened by my male energy. I have a very strong Mars. He has
Mhm.
a Mars in Pisces, which means he will sacrifice for others. Yeah,
Yeah.
and so it works for us. And when you look at our charts, there's these. nice oppositions and and a lot of harmony in there too. So there's stuff that challenges us, and we challenge each other to grow. And we've done all kinds of personal growth, landmark education. We did the Harness Your Heroes together, and that gives us the toolbox because we've reinvented our marriage three
Mm.
times, significant reinventions. Okay. It's like a breakdown. We're not speaking to each other. I call a meeting. It's usually me. I call a meeting and I said, we're gonna get this complete. And we get complete. And from there, we create a new possibility. So we live with this technology where a breakdown is just access to breakthrough.
Well, and it's okay to have a death of that version of your relationship in order to transcend to something new, and also just allowing the new to be born. And like, yeah, I love that. And you had spoken to me about, your morning ritual together, which to me I love, if you don't mind sharing that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So, and I was pretty secretive about my studies of astrology and tarot as a ordained Christian clergy person, and I'm just more comfortable as time has gone on. But we have a practice every morning of drawing a tarot spread, and it's modeled after an astrological chart. So it has your ascendant, your IC, your descendant, and your midheaven, and then a center card. Because in my chart, I have a grand cardinal cross. So I am constantly being pulled into different directions by the cosmos, right? And it helps me rather than to get caught up in the conflicts and the oppositions, to find the center. And so
Mm.
that's what the cards did. And like I said earlier, this morning there were four disc cards about the earth and about resources and the earth is feminine. It's one of the
Mhm.
feminine archetypes. So yeah, and we do that every morning, and we he he does this even if he's on the road. He'll I'll do his cards and send him to him.
Oh,
And
I
even
love.
for camping, we do it. We just do it. And then on, we have a dear friend that lives in Montana that every full moon and new moon, the three of us gather on Zoom and do a check-in every 2 weeks. And it's such a wonderful way to keep that connection going and really deal with the deeper and what's potential. Because every time we draw those cards, it's saying what is possible, and so from that you always have free choice. It's not dictated to you. We have so many choices to manifest the energy that we're feeling, and frankly it's been a very difficult year for almost everybody, and that is because we are going through even astrologers are astounded at the degree of massive changes that are happening with our culture, our zeitgeist.
Well, and I love your use of that tool to sort of hone in your focus, because I share the same sort of polymath energy around many different interests and many different problems or challenges that I intend to solve, but
Hmm.
feeling extremely aligned with a more mystical truth and this sort of definitely unity consciousness, and definitely that as our biggest mechanism for change is a
Yeah,
unification, a
yeah,
radical, beautiful, empathetic unification of our communities, starting at a local level, but also just that, is there something interpersonally that is blocking us from getting to that interconnection, and how do we address that energetically, because there's so many layers, mystical layers within every human being, of grief, trauma, past pain, that can cloud our vision for really the clarity in which we need in this moment to be able to see how to take action. So that really leads me to asking, what is your vision for the biggest opportunities for humanity to come together in unity at this time? And I think you kind of touched on it a little bit, but like, do you have a vision for some of the other mechanisms other than sort of like food and localization of ways in which we can structure a new way of being?
Um, yeah, I have some. I think that we're potentially at a turning point, crisis point, what you call a square, like it's like a choice point in
Right.
humanity
Yeah.
of, of shifting from the attitudes that what I call hubris,
Mhm.
the human species um, ignorance about
Mhm.
our interdependence on all of life, right? And human um, arrogance that humans can solve this with human
Mhm.
inventions, and rather than going back to the basics. And so this idea of the survival of the fittest is a myth that needs to be destroyed.
Mhm.
That what is our survival is our ability to cooperate with each other. That, I mean, and that is how Darwin's work was completely distorted.
Yes. Oh my gosh, Robin, we share this so deeply. It's like Einstein's quote, you cannot solve a problem with the same thinking that you use to create it. And that's where when we pump all this money into climate tech and all these unicorn solutions, that's not the answer. The answer
No,
is allowing Earth to regenerate and funding her regeneration, hands in the soil, community linked hand in hand. It's about a return to what we actually need, which is not at all what Amazon's sending to our door. It's not at all going rocket ships to space. It's literally
no,
what do we need in our bodies? We need good food, great
yeah,
air, great water, love,
yeah,
interconnection,
yeah.
interdependent. It's
Hmm.
like it's almost like the hyper simplification of
Yeah.
humanity.
And um, we need the natural world. We need the animal world. We need the insect world. We need the plant world. We need the mycelium and the fungi. We need to understand that despite human um, intention to dominate the natural world, it won't work. And
Well,
so then I've watched, my husband and I watched the Apocalypse of the Past series on Netflix, where he goes back and he talks about, like the rise of these different civilizations, and it kind of debunks that um, human civilization started after the last ice age, and so we've had some false science that's been taught us, and really it's this idea that the earth is very powerful.
yes,
Natural world is very powerful, and we should respect that
we
if
so deeply
yeah,
more than
like what we're doing to the oceans
Mhm.
and what we're doing to the Amazon, the lungs and the circulatory system of the earth, water and air.
Well, and for so long, I have been feeling years the only real luxury is nature. the the number one luxury we have as a species is water, it is air, it is the soil. Without those three critical elements, we cease to exist like instantaneously.
Yeah.
It's like, how is it that we choose consumption of these luxury goods and private jets over the literal things that keep us alive and thriving.
And it's actually more insidious at times. So let's take my totem animals, the wolf. Wolf are keystone species. And back in my home state of Montana, my heart breaks all the time because of the way the leadership that was elected in 2021 in Montana has their cruelty towards wolves. The
Why?
cruelty towards wolves, because I have a theory, and that is that this idea of fighting to be the master of the universe, like
Mm,
who's going to win this game of being the most powerful man in the world is what we're dealing with right now. And they're ruthless. They haven't been taught to care. They haven't been raised to share. They're emotionally stunted. They haven't had
incapacity.
all their emotions developed, and they're killing a species. They're destroying whole species of animals. And so it is, we are not alone here. I mean, and the wolf is shows the crisis of it because it's the oldest partnership,
Mhm,
interspecies partnership that exists. They understood that they were better off together and they
mhm.
learned to coexist successfully. And here we are trying to wipe wolves off
Yeah.
the face of the earth. And that's just one example of that we can't continue thinking that human beings can suppress the natural world, can
Mhm.
control the natural world.
Well, I guess the thing that always comes up for me is anything that isn't love, is fear, and that need to control is deeply connected to fear and insecurity. And so when you look at it through that lens, it's like these actions are the least masculine, least powerful. They're sad. They're not even,
It's
it's
stunted masculine. That yeah, this where you when you try
fear.
to separate masculine as though some men have this and nobody else. Even like when you have tried to take things and separate them rather than the fact that they're always in conversation with each other. All of our archetypes that are shaping our identity are always in conversation. Like we have this play going on in our mind all the time, balancing all these voices. And we think we're one person, but we're multiples. And
Yeah.
and if we could realize that we're multiples, then the world actually thrives on that multiples. And so, in one of my biggest joys of this little ecosystem I built on a small city lot from a situation where they scraped off all the topsoil after they and left it for us to build on, so it was like blank canvas, but no soil. and but what is some of the most exciting moments was discovering a garter snake
My favorite.
in our, we have
That's
this
my
great,
totem, Robin.
yeah, garter
Yeah.
snake. And
Yeah.
then the frogs are all over the place out there. And we have mice, and a neighborhood cat showed up about a month ago and started controlling our mice and sneaks in the gate. And we have never even seen the cat, but he does it at night. And we were thinking, well, I don't want a cat, but it's part of keeping the system into its natural order because you can't have an invasive species. So I'm so aware that the energy of these people who are seeking to lead the world is toxic to
Well,
all of us.
and the missing, like what is missing is that the richness of life is in the complexity of emotion and feeling the sadness, the pain, the grief, and not allowing the fear to be the compass of your life. Like or to me, when men are like emotionally available, emotionally conscious and able to feel the hard feelings and the grief and the sadness, that is to me so much more attractive and profound and the spiritual interconnection. So it's like there's a whole when we're not grieving and when we're wanting to control out of fear of our own inner landscape, we are missing an entire complexity, an entire facet of existence that is profound in
Yeah,
experience.
it is.
So it's like
Yeah.
sad. It's sad because it's like we all could be doing so much better together, allowing ourselves to be the full spectrum of our humanity. And, that's the thing is like I always say, hurt people hurt people. And it's like when we have these leaders that are out here just trying to manipulate and control, like I see the deep pain that they have within, the deep insecurity, the deep sadness from their childhood, or that inner little boy that is just screaming to be loved and lost track of that unconditional essence.
And so much effort they have to put into being strong men and bullies. And honestly, I do think that there's no solution to it until we appreciate the importance of how we raise our children as a community, not as
Well,
isolated family units, but as a community.
I agree. I think that like the community space, like what you're building within your beautiful community, that it's almost like that gets developed at a different frequency and a different reality than these other painfully transparent um gasps for control and gasps for manipulation. It's like they can't even meet. They're in separate creation. And that's
Yeah.
what I really hope for is that, and I see happening is that there's these movements of interconnection, interdependence, bioregional resilience, vitality, community building that are happening all over the world. And they're happening with beautiful frameworks and thinkers and innovation and but then they just aren't even in the same space. We're going to create a different reality that is outside of this other one of extreme control.
Yeah, I think that's a really important thing that I want to leave people with in this particular moment is that you can't, there's only so much benefit in fighting
Mhm.
the disintegration of systems created by patriarchy, who that originated out of that. There's just not very much possibility there. And Buckminster Fuller has that famous quote, if you want to change it, start over. I mean, so really what we're dealing with and I again, I use as many metaphors from the natural world. This is a chrysalis time. Humanity has gone through other chrysalis times where we go into like the dark ages. We are in the dark ages right
The
now.
dissolution, the
And
dissolution.
what we have to be nurturing inside of the cocoon is the imaginal cells.
Mhm.
And so I'm really urge people to think of new ideas, new ways of connecting with other people, new ways of generating the resources you need to live, because we're also probably going to experience a collapse of our old monetary system that's imminent, right? So that gives us a great opportunity. You could say great despair, but I love challenges. So it's like this is the time where the seeds that we plant are going to become trees that we never imagined.
Yes. Oh, Robin, that's a beautiful and I just feel so connected to you like a soul sister because the words that you speak, I'm like, that is my soul. That is my
I
soul. That's what
I
I've
felt that the first day we met.
absolutely, totally. And that is exactly the right notion because it's like we shepherding a hospicing of this current situation is a waste of energy.
Mhm.
It is a brand new way of being, thinking, which, the concept of stationarity often prohibits us from being able to imagine the new because we haven't seen it before. And that's exactly what we have to do,
Yeah.
is be imaginal and emergent in this new way of being.
And the planets are telling us that. The
Mhm.
astrologers are saying it's an unprecedented time of dramatic changes. All of the outer planets are shifting signs. And
Yeah,
you think, oh, it's just a few degrees. Each one of those is designed to be um, a, a, a fairly significant advancement in human evolution.
a true
Every time,
catalyst.
yeah, every time an outer planet moves to a new sign, it's bringing a new experience. And we have all kinds of new things that we haven't even got on our radar yet, but they're out there. And the young people, I'm really, I think that's where a lot of resources need to go into the people going off to college in the next year and in college and coming out, and yeah, just nurturing that. And the idea that the old ways, the old systems evaluating success are worn out.
They're dead already.
Yeah.
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 I agree with you. I think these kids are holding a new frequency, a different level of ability of being,
Mhm.
and they aren't as affected by the past or the systems, or they don't even know them really.
We all come into this earth. Every child is born unique because the location of the rest of the universe is only there for that moment in that place in that time. And that is the purpose of human beings.
The
That human
blueprint.
beings are here to be part of that ongoing evolution of not
Yeah,
only what it means to be human, but of being part of um, evolving life, which Earth is this grand experiment about life, right?
yeah.
So, let's focus on life, not death.
Yes. Oh my gosh, Robin, this has been such a gift of a conversation.
Yeah. It's
Thank
it's
you.
I knew I was gonna love it.
Oh my gosh, we could talk for days,
We
honestly.
could, we could. And I'm looking forward to those days that we do that because I think you'll.
Yes. Oh my gosh, thank you so much for being here, Robin. Appreciate you so deeply.
Yeah. Yep. Well, anything you want from me, I'm here.
Is there
I'm
anything else that you want to leave anyone with? Or, I mean, I think there have been some amazing completions, but is there any final words that you'd like to share?
um I would say that I highly recommend people learn how to tune into the cosmic energies. The one of the most exciting thing that's developing under Pluto in Aquarius is the research and the richness and the integration of those planetary movements with science and math and religion. And I mean, it's an opportunity to get new insights. And for me, it has been a huge blessing because when I'm in a state of confusion, I don't know what to do or where to turn or how to go or what to do next, or even making big life choices. I always look at what the energies are, and
Very
I
helpful.
tap into the gifts that I was given because we're all given unique gifts, and I really recommend that. In fact, I've been actually thinking about pulling together something like that, a group that would not would learn how to use those energies to make their life work better.
I think that's brilliant. Thank
Yeah,
you so much, Robin.
yeah. Thank you.